Hey, okay, so we've used jQuery a little bit. Now we're gonna just like kick around a little and try to find some other libraries to try out. So one that I've used before, it's a really complicated one, but it's also really cool to demonstrate some stuff, is called ChartJS. So let's say I wanted to make a basic like bar chart or line chart or something like that. I might look up, can you imagine even how to build it? It seems really complicated. How are you gonna draw all these lines? So you might look up chart library JavaScript. Okay, and the first one that comes up is ChartJS, and then there's all these best of. This is another good case for using ChatGPT, is ask it what are the best charting libraries for JS, and they'll give you a bunch. Google often ends up with these 15 best things, which are kind of a pain in the butt. Anyway, ChartJS is a really good one. So if we go to it, okay, so this is a huge library, so this is one that you can probably guess is going to be well maintained. But it's kind of like, okay, how do we do it? Okay, get started, and then okay, there's all this stuff. Now we have to get started. Okay, installation. There's a type of installation we haven't gone over in this course. You're going to see this kind of stuff sometimes, this npm install. Don't worry about that. That's not for now. That's for later in your web development career. We're using these things called CDNs. That's where we load it directly into our page. So here's one. Here's a CDN. So we can click that, copy the link address, then we'll come back over to our index.html and we'll load in this script, src chart.js, okay, and that seems to, okay, hopefully load stuff in. Installation, there we go, okay, that's looking good. Now how can we test to see if it's working? Okay, they have like integration, that's kind of complicated. No, step-by-step guide. Okay, that all looks kind of complicated. Okay, here's some actual stuff we recognize, some HTML and some JavaScript, although there's this thing called importing, which looks a little complicated. Anyway, let's see if we can maybe copy some of this. This is really typical to what we do when you're messing around with a library the first time. You're not really sure exactly how everything works, so you're kind of just trying to make something work, and then later you'll figure out the details, the really good details here. So what do we have here going on? We have this thing where it has a div called acquisitions, okay, and it's in this thing called a canvas, and then it has some script here, and that script does this importing thing, which we're not really familiar with, but here's a function. It says async, which is another thing we don't really know. Function, and then it has some stuff here. We recognize this. This is an array, and it's an array of objects, which we do understand, and it's a variable. And then it does this thing, new chart. It does a get element by ID. We have seen that. So that is somehow tied to this canvas ID acquisitions. And then there's a bunch of other stuff. It gives it some object that says type bar. So this is probably stuff related to this library, like options and things. And it says data. It has labels, which seem to correspond to this data that is defined up here, and then there's some more labels and stuff. So okay, this could be a struggle if you're on your own, but I'm just gonna kind of do what I would do, which I would just copy this function. Well, actually I would first put in this bit of HTML because it seems important. So I would come over here and let's just at the end of everything drop in this bit of HTML. We save that. Nothing should really appear. There's a scroll bar now, so something happened, and we can see it did have a width 800 pixels. This is just another attribute. It's another way of writing CSS. You can write it inside a script, a style attribute. I didn't really want to show you that because it encourages you to write CSS this way when it's generally better to write it inside your CSS document, but they're doing it here just to be kind of quick about it and not make you make a CSS document. But this is kind of what I mean, that as you start to use libraries and start to actually use JavaScript, you're just going to run into so much stuff that I didn't talk about and that would have been really distracting and confusing, that you just have to accept there's going to be a lot of it, but hopefully you can navigate your way through it, right? Anyway, okay, so we added this, and now I'm going to try to add this function, and we're just going to see if this works. Okay, so take that. We have our script.js. So after this stuff, I'm going to put in this function and just see, I don't know, let's see if it like does something. Okay, so when we load it, now let's load the page here. Didn't do anything. Okay, did we get any errors? Let's see here. It says chart is not defined. Okay, so that seems to be telling us that there's some kind of issue that maybe this script didn't load what we wanted it to. Maybe this isn't quite the right thing or something like that. Maybe we can try adding that little import. I don't think that is going to work, but let's try and see if that does work. You never know, I might be crazy and wrong. So let's try putting in this import thing up here. Try loading that, and we load it. Still no luck. Okay, so what's going on? How do we get that to work? Do they have a different example? How are we going to make this work? It doesn't seem to be loading it right. So maybe it's something to do with this CDN that they gave us, this thing. So maybe we'll try doing it from a different CDN, because our code definitely looks right, but it's not loading here. So let's go CDN ChartJS. And okay, it gives us this example, but there's other ones. Maybe we'll go to this one, and we'll just see this gives us a different type of script tag. So we try loading this in instead. Okay, so go here, we try loading that. Now we press save, and oh, a chart appeared. Look at that. So, okay, so now we have this whole chart. So the issue in this case was something to do with their docs wasn't built for quite what we're doing. It looks like maybe this CDN JS, and then they have another CDN. So actually this is the one we should have been using, not this one. This is the kind of stuff that you run into that's a bit confusing, can make these frustrating, and takes some trial and error to muss around, look at the docs, try stuff, look at examples, Google things. You might end up finding your way through it. So now that we have this kind of working, and there's a bar chart that's actually showing on our page here, okay, how could we change some stuff on this? That's kind of the next step. Okay, so let's say we wanted to change it just to say acquisitions year by year, and just see what that changes. Okay, we reload, and it changed this little title. That's kind of cool. Okay, what if, wow, and there's some functionality in it where if I click, it hides stuff. That's just like built in. We could probably turn that off if we wanted. But let's go through and see, okay, chart types. Do they have other types? Maybe I want to make a line chart. Okay, so a line chart, they have an example here with some kind of setup. So there's a config and a setup. It's not totally clear what I do here. Maybe do they have just like a different example? Charts? No. Okay, maybe we can look up line chart ChartJS. And there's a whole bunch of examples from there, but then there's also this example that is just on some website, some random website. So, you know, go in, let's see. Okay, this says just put this new chart thing here. Okay, so we take that. Maybe we'll get rid of what we had here, and instead we'll put this in, and we'll just quickly look at it. It's saying get element by ID line chart, and then type line. It has some data, which is some particular type of data, and then okay, some display options. Now we don't have something called line chart because we were using something called acquisitions. So maybe we'll just change this to be acquisitions instead. Now we'll save that, and we'll reload. And cool, we got a little line chart. Okay, so what have we done? We have gone through the docs, been confused, done a little Googling, found some random website where something worked here, and now we could start actually looking, where are we, at the ChartJS docs to understand what is actually happening here. We can see this has something that says data, and it has labels and data sets. And that's kind of similar here, labels and data sets. So by looking at this, we can start to understand how this library works based on what we want to do. Now, this was meandering, this journey I just took you through trying to use ChartJS. This is a big, complicated library like jQuery, and it's not expected that you're going to just understand it right out the gate. But the reason I wanted to show you this kind of library as opposed to some really, really small, simple one is because you're going to encounter libraries of all different sizes. And sometimes the ones you really, really want to use are the best ones, which are lots of times kind of complicated like this. So kind of getting used to this process of bumping your way through them and being confused and looking stuff up is a big part of it. We're going to do a lot with the particular libraries Leaflet and Mapbox, or Leaflet and MapLibra later in the course. But and I'm going to take you through those in really close detail. But being a web developer means using libraries a lot and getting used to reading a lot of different documentation. So I don't want you to be too afraid of doing it. You should know that it's a bit challenging, but just going through, taking a stab at things, throwing stuff at the wall, putting in code that you don't understand, trying to read through it, that's how you're going to become better, and that's how you're really going to superpower your sites. So hope this helped. Leave comments if you need any more help, or if you want more examples of libraries. I'll be happy to do more, and we'll see you in the next one.